The Zephyrian council chamber buzzed with indignation as Ambassador Kethvar's tentacles writhed in barely contained fury. The holographic display showed scenes of carnage from the outer colonies, torn flesh, scattered belongings, and the unmistakable paw prints of the beasts that had once been their companions. "The Vrikari must be eliminated," Kethvar declared, his voice echoing through the crystalline walls. "These creatures have become nothing but savage killers. They show no mercy, no restraint. They are a plague upon our civilization." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled delegates. The Altarians nodded their scaled heads solemnly, while the Centaurans stamped their hooved feet in approval. For 3 cycles, the Vrikari, wolf-like creatures native to Zephyr Prime, had been terrorizing the outer settlements. Once loyal companions to the Zephyrians, they had somehow reverted to their primal instincts, forming packs that hunted sentient beings with ruthless efficiency. "The extermination fleet stands ready," General Vexthul reported, his cybernetic implants flickering with combat readiness. "We can cleanse all 7 affected worlds within a standard rotation." Captain Sarah Chen sat quietly in the observers section, her weathered hands folded in her lap. As the sole human representative in this sector of the galaxy, she had grown accustomed to being overlooked in such discussions. Humans were still newcomers to the Galactic Alliance, barely 2 centuries since first contact. Most species viewed them as primitive, emotional creatures barely capable of space travel. But as she listened to the debate, something stirred within her. A memory of cold Montana nights, of howls echoing through pine forests, and of amber eyes reflecting firelight. "If I may," Sarah said, rising slowly from her seat. The chamber fell silent. Kethvar's eye stalk swiveled toward her with obvious irritation. "Human Chen, this matter does not concern your species. The Vrikari are not present in your sector." "Perhaps not," Sarah replied, stepping into the speaker's circle. "But wolves are." Confused chittering filled the air. The Zephyrians had never heard this term before. Sarah activated her personal display unit, projecting images from Earth. Vast wilderness areas where wolves roamed free, their pack structures, their hunting behaviors. Then she showed different images. Wolves with glossy coats sitting beside human children. Wolves wearing harnesses, pulling sleds across frozen landscapes. Wolves with service animal vests guiding blind humans through busy streets. "These are wolves," she explained. "Predators that once hunted our ancestors. We nearly drove them to extinction out of fear, just as you planned to do with the Vrikari. But we learned something important. Sometimes the problem isn't the predator. Sometimes it's us." General Vexthul's mechanical voice grated with skepticism. "You suggest these beasts can be reasoned with? The Vrikari have killed hundreds of our people." "Have you asked why?" Sarah challenged. "In my species' history, wolves only became truly dangerous when their territory was invaded, their pack structure disrupted, or their food sources eliminated. What changed on those outer worlds 3 cycles ago?" Ambassador Kethvar's tentacles stiffened. "We established new mining operations, expanded agricultural zones. These were uninhabited regions." "Uninhabited by your people," Sarah corrected. "But the Vrikari lived there, didn't they? You took their hunting grounds, scattered their packs, forced them to compete for shrinking resources. In desperation, they turned to the only abundant prey left, your colonists." The chamber erupted in angry protests. How dare this primitive human question their expansion policies? But Sarah pressed on, her voice cutting through the noise. "I request permission to visit one of the affected worlds. Give me 30 standard days. If I can't prove the Vrikari can be rehabilitated, you can proceed with your extermination." 3 weeks later, Sarah crouched in the ruins of a Zephyrian outpost on Kepler 442c, her breathing apparatus filtering the thin atmosphere. Around her, a pack of 6 Vrikari emerged from the shadows, magnificent creatures standing nearly 4 feet tall, their silver-gray fur matted and scarred, their eyes wild with hunger and fear. The pack leader, a massive female with a distinctive white blaze across her muzzle, growled low and threatening. Sarah remained perfectly still, extending her senses the way her grandfather had taught her during those long-ago camping trips in Yellowstone. She could read their body language, the flattened ears, the defensive postures, the way they kept glancing toward a rocky outcropping where she suspected they had cubs hidden. These weren't mindless killers. They were desperate parents. Slowly, Sarah reached into her pack and withdrew a chunk of synthesized protein. She tossed it halfway between herself and the pack, then retreated several steps. The wolves watched her with intelligent eyes, evaluating the threat. After several tense minutes, the youngest male darted forward, grabbed the food, and retreated. Day by day, Sarah established trust. She learned their language. Not words, but the subtle communications of posture, scent, and sound that wolves had used for millennia. She discovered the pack was indeed protecting a litter of cubs, born just before the mining operation had destroyed their traditional den sites. More importantly, she identified the root cause of their aggression. The Zephyrian expansion had inadvertently blocked their migration routes to seasonal hunting grounds, trapping them in an area with insufficient prey. Faced with starvation, they had done what any intelligent predator would do, adapted their hunting strategy. By the end of her 30-day deadline, Sarah had accomplished something the Galactic Alliance had deemed impossible. She walked into the council chamber flanked by the pack leader, who wore a simple collar Sarah had fashioned from local materials. The massive Vrikari's presence sent several delegates scrambling for their weapons, but the creature simply sat at Sarah's side, alert but calm. "Members of the council," Sarah began, "I present Aquila. Yes, I've given her a name from my world's literature. She represents not a savage beast, but a highly intelligent species that has been pushed to the brink by our expansion into their territory." Sarah's presentation outlined a comprehensive solution: establishing wildlife corridors that connected the Vrikari's traditional hunting grounds, relocating the most problematic mining operations, and implementing a partnership program where Vrikari could work alongside colonists as trackers and guardians, roles they had performed for the Zephyrians for thousands of years before the recent expansion. "The Vrikari don't need to be exterminated," Sarah concluded. "They need to be understood. On my world, we learned that predators aren't our enemies, they're our partners in maintaining the balance of nature. The choice is yours. Destroy a species that could become humanity's greatest asset, or learn from a smaller, younger civilization that made the same mistake you're about to make." Ambassador Kethavar's tentacles trembled, not with rage this time, but with something resembling shame. "You would share your knowledge? Help us implement these solutions?" Sarah smiled and placed her hand on Aquila's massive head. The wolf's tail thumped once against the crystalline floor. That's what partners do. 6 months later, the outer colonies reported their first Vrikari-assisted rescue operation. A mining team trapped by a landslide had been located and guided to safety by a pack, working with human and Zephyrian search teams. The same creatures once condemned as savage killers had saved 17 lives. In the Galactic Alliance records, the incident became known as the Vrikari Rehabilitation Protocol. But among the humans, it was simply remembered as the day Earth's children taught the galaxy an old lesson. Sometimes the fiercest loyalty comes from those who were once your greatest enemies. And in the forests of 7 worlds, wolves howled again, not in hunger or fear, but in the ancient song of the pack, now sung in harmony with new voices among the stars.